Good morning, everyone. As we let the numbers build, you're all very welcome to today's Hospitality and Tourism Professionals Day, brought to you by the IHI. This is the morning session that you're in. And before we get started, I'd just like to go through some housekeeping. You're in a Zoom webinar format, so you'll notice that there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. Please feel free to use this Q&A button to ask questions throughout the event. We have a great panel here today, and we'll endeavour to try and answer those questions throughout, and we have left significant time for a live Q&A at the end as well. Just one more thing, there will be a post-webinar survey that will pop up in your screens when you leave the webinar. Please, this is invaluable information for the IHI if you could fill this out. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to your host, Una Kremens.
Thank you very much, Leo. And it's with a genuine welcome to all of you for joining us here this morning. And it's hello to members, non-members, fellows, colleagues, and friends of the Institute. We are so delighted to welcome you to our first ever Irish Hospitality and Tourism Professionals Day. It's fair to say that we are genuinely overwhelmed by the fantastic level of registrations and support we have received for this event. So thank you one and all for your support today. It speaks of an industry that is always curious, open, ever learning and wanting to improve. Today is also a very proud moment for all of us within the Institute at every level, membership, board and executive level. This day, full of events, is a demonstration of our agility and innovation as to how we should mark this date of our Founders Banquet and Hospitality Awards, which you all know is a much loved event in the hospitality calendar. 2020 has proven to be a year of firsts for all of us, where having the ability and the agility to adapt and innovate has become our necessary default and go-to action. I, along with many of you, have been heartened and motivated by the fantastic resilience and innovations, both in product and service, that we see happening daily in our industry. What's also been terrific is the level of content being shared cross-agency, cross-business, and cross-function. Our Tourism Recovery Task Force was a shining example of this. All of us should be really proud today. And we are hugely appreciative that the President of Ireland, President Michael D. Higgins, will address us by video as an industry later on today at 1740. His willingness to make this address is a very sincere and heartfelt recognition of the impact and huge challenges we as an industry have been through this year and continue to face in 2021 and beyond. Our industry is a people industry, and we in the Institute see ourselves as a mirror reflection of that. Our vision in the Institute is that we are the largest professional body for those working and studying in hospitality and tourism, Ireland's largest Indigenous industry. The Tourism Recovery Plan stated that one of tourism's core values is its people, and went on to say that protecting workers and retaining vital skills and intellectual capital within the tourism sector will be critical for a strong recovery. This focus on our people was also a key finding of the research we completed with our members in August. At that time, you told us you wished to have support and learning content in the following areas: leadership, managing change, mental health, sales and marketing management, and HR policy. Some of these topics we have already showcased in our bi-monthly webinar series within the Institute. These webinars have had a huge level of engagement with both members and non-members. In tandem with our virtual coffee mornings, what these events have demonstrated is the high level of peer support within the industry, as people shared learnings and knowledge in an open yet non-competitive environment. I think this is a fantastic reflection of the generosity of spirit and the genuine hospitality that we value in the Irish tourist industry. Daily, we see that the stop and start nature of the restrictions have had a devastating impact and has made the retention of talent within the industry very challenging. This migration away from tourism will continue to be a critical issue for us as we return towards more normal trading environments, we hope, by mid next year. The topics of both of our sessions today are centered very much on the talent within our industry and what skill sets we and our teams will need to power our recovery in the first instance, but also to deliver service to a changed audience who will have very different expectations for 2021 and beyond. Today's conversation is going to be shaped with some great thought-provoking content. And our first session this morning is looking at leadership in uncertain times. To discuss this topic, we have brought together some great leaders from our sector to share their thoughts and insights with us on how we can expect our industry to evolve over the coming months and what might be our milestone moments on that journey. We hope you will enjoy the conversations, and we hope you actively engage with them through the question and answer facility that we have set up on this call. Today would not be possible without the financial support of all of our patrons and business partners on an annual basis. We also owe a very big thank you to Fáilte Ireland and Great Places to Work for their very generous financial support today. Thank you to Broadline Recruiters, who are a patron of the Institute and who have been very generous in their support as well to this event today. Sincere thanks to Core Optimization, who are supporting our online social media today and have helped shape our social strategy around this event. Sincere thanks to Net Affinity, who are sponsoring the Network Lounge event later this afternoon. I also would like to call out a very big thank you to the following industry organisations for their support in sharing the invite for today's event with their members, enabling us to bring all areas of our industry together: the RAI, IHF, ITIC, AVIA, ATGI and LVA. And of course, a very big thank you to the team at IHI, Tina and Cynthia, who've worked tirelessly on this project, supported by the Deputy President, Brian Bowler, who will be on our panel discussion today, and really has been supported by all our board members who are actively involved in delivering this event. Special thanks to Muireann King and Dara O'Neill, who are Head of Membership and Events, and who have also given great commitment to the event today. It's really a great show of the sense of collaboration and partnership that exists within our industry. Pól O'Conghaile will lead us in our first conversation today and will share his thoughts on how change might manifest itself in the coming months and years for our industry. Later this afternoon, Valentina Durley will talk us through the megatrends emerging in the consumer and traveller arena and promises to challenge us all to think change and innovation in all that we do. Pól is a huge friend of hospitality and right throughout this crisis has proved a great support with his various social campaigns and supportive editorial, showcasing the best of what Ireland has to offer and highlighting hospitality heroes right across the country for us on our behalf. We can't thank you enough for that support, Pól, and we really appreciate it. He has also been voted Travel Writer of the Year in both Ireland and the UK, has been published all over the world, and as a travel expert features regularly on national TV and radio. With no further delay, I will hand over to Pól now, and I will speak to you just after to kickstart the panel discussion. Meanwhile, if I can just remind you, if you have any questions, then please use the Q&A button to send those questions to us. Welcome again, Pól, and over to you now.
Thanks, Emil, Una. And it's lovely to see you. It's lovely to see the attendees trickling in. I wish I could see all of those faces.
I know.
I am going to speak to you about, from the consumer side, I guess. Una has asked me on here to give an overview of what I think is coming. Now, I have no idea what's coming, but I'm going to do my best to speculate. And what I'm going to try and do is distill down my travel desk, my emails, the marketing correspondence I'm getting, the research I'm reading, the surveys that are coming through, and share with you the highlights and some trends that I think are emerging from all of that. So let me get my my screen going here. And the very first thing I want to say, guys, is thank you. Thank you so much for all of the wonderful trips and memories and meals and nights away and experiences that me and my family have had with you in the run-up to the pandemic. Thank you for your creativity and your inspiration and for hanging in there this year. It's meant so much to us. You really are a guiding light, and we really look forward to the trips we'll take, hopefully very soon. Hang in there, and thank you. And I know I speak for a lot of families when I say that. Now, what the hell has just happened? I think we're still trying to pick up the pieces of that. We went into February looking at 2019 as a year of peak tourism, really, on this planet. 1.4 billion people moving around the world on holidays, 11 million visitors to this island. And I think it's fair to say, looking back now, that that was a high watermark for mass travel. And I just don't know when or if we're going to see that again. So where are we now? I don't need to tell you that this is an existential crisis. That's a report from Euromonitor put it just last week. I think that we're seeing a recession that is skewed against services and culture, which is adversely affecting everybody looking in on this call. I think this year and next are years of survival, years when we are just going to be treading water, trying to keep afloat, where staff retention is a huge issue. Nobody knows how long this recovery is going to take. I spoke to Eddie Wilson of Ryanair this week, you may have read it, and he was all gung-ho saying that we'll be back to normal by summer. I've also read a report this week saying recovery could take to 2029. We just don't know, but hopefully it's beginning. So what I want to speak to you a little bit about is where the trend lines are leading. And I have come up with a travel term here, the big five. Seeing as I'm grounded, I can't go on trips or safaris or any kind of travel at the moment. These are the 5 areas, reading through everything on my desk at the moment, that are coming to the surface. Reset, safety, experience, sustainability, and community. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit of detail. First, the great reset. We've hit rock bottom in tourism and hospitality. So what now? This is a report here from Euromonitor, just put out last week. I'd encourage you to have a look at it. It very much pitches 2020 as a circuit breaker of a year when we've now been months without being able to travel overseas, weeks without being able to travel around the country. Our habits are broken. We don't know if we'll pick them up in the same way. You've seen trends accelerate. You've seen other things disappear. BA retired at 747s. We're using less cash, etc., etc. This is what disruption looks like. And we're talked about disruption in travel a lot. It can be a bad thing. It can really shake the cobwebs off, but it can also be the ideal time to innovate and to create and to dream up new stuff. And that's what I want to look at. You know, from everything I do, I try and lean towards the positive. I try and lean towards the optimistic. And that's what I'm trying to do now, to see this as a space and a time to reimagine what we're doing and to bring Ireland back as a tourism leader. I want to share with you here a quote that painfully was made in April in New Zealand. I know we all love to hate New Zealand and its progress, but their tourism minister said in April, we have an opportunity now to rethink the entire way we approach tourism, to make New Zealand a more sustainable place, enrich the lives of our people, and deliver a sector that's financially self-sustaining. Already at that stage, at a countrywide level, it was looking at how to dream it all up again. And I really think that's what we should be doing at this stage. So the next key term that I'm seeing coming through again and again and again is safety reassurance. This is, you could look at any research document coming through, any survey at the moment, and this is going to be a key word. We are absolutely obsessed with safety, with hygiene, with our health at the moment, and it's obvious why. Fáilte Ireland's consumer sentiment research brings this to the fore again and again. I think it's worth pointing out that our attitudes to risk differ depending on who we are. So I have 2 kids. I'm thinking when I book holidays about keeping my family safe. I might be a little bit conservative Someone who's younger than me with less family commitments might have a slightly be more risk tolerant, maybe will be incentivized by those cheap air sales that we may see next year. And then people who are older than I am, who have been adversely affected by coronavirus, may be even more cautious. So it's worth thinking about your consumers and your future customers in that regard. We're seeing a lot of late bookings. Any travel that's happened this year has been pretty last minute. And I think coming in tandem with that is the sense that we need security. We need to be able to cancel flexible bookings. We need to make sure that when we commit our spend, that we have an opt-out. We don't want to get stuck. And a lot of people, as you know, were burnt with vouchers and refunds and so on this year. We ran in the Irish Independent recently a special version of our Reader Travel Awards. We couldn't give out prizes this year for obvious reasons, and our readers shared the most beautiful stories and images of the holidays they had this summer. And thank you so much for facilitating those holidays. But it actually, I didn't see this coming, but it turned into a really fascinating trove of data. They really wrote sentence after sentence, paragraph after paragraph of what they liked when they were holidaying, what they enjoyed about it. And as I go through these slides, I'm going to share a little bit of that, but it kept coming back to simplicity, to safety, and to the open airs, the open air. These are just some of the things people have been saying. Fresh air, just wanted to go for a walk. Unfollowing, I thought, is a fun term for looking at next year. And they don't mean that sort of logging off social media. They mean getting away from the crowds. The owner of Intrepid Travel in the UK has said wilderness is the new wellness for next year. Another survey by the World Travel and Tourism Council said that most travelers in North America want to go anywhere uncrowded. So that's a good thing for wide open spaces, and rural places, not so good for cities. And I love from one reader, we just love the freedom of skipping through long grass after a long lockdown in the capital. That is surfacing again and again in what I'm reading. So here's kind of, this is a selfie that I took in Tokyo about 2 years ago, and it just strikes me as kind of the opposite of what people are searching out at the moment. TripAdvisor released a report last week where it said 65% of its people searching on its site this year, and that's millions and millions of people, say the ability to avoid crowded places is more important now than it was pre-pandemic. And I'm starting to see in the way people are marketing holidays abroad for next year, they're really tapping into this. That's just one example. Sunville holidays without the hordes. That's a picture from Sifnos, Greek island. As we look to international travel recovering, there's been a lot of progress. If I had given this talk a month ago, it would have been very different on the international. Signed up to the traffic light system. There's testing in progress at Cork, Shannon, and Dublin. 99% of North Americans want to travel next year, according to that World Travel Tourism Council survey. So there is pent-up demand out there, and that's an encouraging thing. We also obviously have good news on 3 vaccines, but that has to be tempered with a huge realism. There is no way everybody's going to have vaccine in their arm and be traveling as normal by spring. Just not going to happen. Who's going to get it first? How slow will it be? What will the take-up be? I think we're still looking at possibly years of traveling with masks, with social distancing, with this kind of disruption. So we really need to be realistic and not be tempted into a false optimism as we look forward. I'm thinking of 2021 possibly as a year of the bubble, and that's because I've never had so many press releases come through where people are talking about bubbles. You looked at how popular self-catering was this year. That's a bubble, self-contained holiday. Cruise ships are starting to cleverly, I think, pitch themselves as floating bubbles. This is presuming obviously everybody has tested negative before they board in future. I've seen people talk about blended groups and small tours. So that might be you and your grandparents and family friends going on a small tour together in a bubble. Bring your own bubble. That's another tour operator said in an email to me this week. I see an opportunity for luxury travel, for exclusivity here, but also possibly in terms of all inclusive. There are gated resorts around the world already, and these are at the very high end where they are welcoming guests who test negative. And then those guests feel once they're on the campus, and they pay for the pleasure, of course, excuse me, that they are in a bubble as well. So again, this is all coming back to safety. Bermuda, would you like to be working from Bermuda at the moment? Well, they released a scheme recently where for $263 you can work a year. That's what the permit costs. We're probably well fed up of offices and working from kitchen tables at the moment. And I think that idea of working in a relatively safe environment ties in with the trend for remote working. Again, it's about safety, it's about bubbles. So the final slide I'll show you on safety is just, I'd encourage you to think about reputation. As we start to roll out vaccines and people start to cautiously re-engage with travel, I think the reputation of countries and destinations is going to be absolutely critical. You think of places like New Zealand, which I mentioned, places like the Canaries, which have had that safety message coming through all along this year. Think about Germany, for instance, its robust health system. Will they be better positioned to welcome tourism? Will people feel safer traveling there? Who will recover faster or vaccinate faster and get this sorted? Who will have a shambles of a vaccine rollout that make people worry about traveling there? Safe places can benefit hugely in future, but we need to get that messaging and those protocols in place. And Ireland can lead on this. We talk about leadership, everything I've said there, wide open spaces, creative people, having the safety charter rolled out, knowing your audience. Ireland is absolutely world class in those regards. People think Ireland is safe. Let's keep them thinking that as we go forward. Okay, next thing I want to share with you is experience. And this is a word that was obviously big before the pandemic, but let me show you why I think it's grown even more now. This is my favorite tweet of the year. I think it sums up 2020 in an absolute nutshell. Scientist Gretchen Goldman in the US shared this split screen, speaking on CNN on one half, and then on the other, the reality of it, just about holding her life together. And I'm sure so many of you can empathize with that, with the toys everywhere and the laptop balanced on the chair and the top half dressed for work and the bottom half loungewear. And we're just exhausted trying to hold all of this stuff together. And that made me think of this is my family on holiday a couple of years ago in a completely different universe in Sicily. My wife, my kids, my mum, my dad, and just sitting back in Sicily, eating fresh food, listening to Italian folk around us, having the sun on our backs, watching the family ticking over. And I think the combination of those two things, that sense of lockdown frustration, just about holding everything together, and this, what holidays and what travel can provide for us in terms of enjoying each other's company and completely immersing ourselves in different places, are really, really have bedded in with us. And I think we're going to look at taking more meaningful, more memorable trips in the future. I said to my own mom this week, I want to get our next family holiday right, and I don't mind paying for it. Now, experiences, as I said, are growing. Here's an interesting story from the Washington Post this year, travel companies that are thriving amid the pandemic, which was an interesting take in a story. One of them was Peak, which is an experiential booking platform. In March, it found its business tanked, but it pivoted to start to sell people who were doing local tours for people in their neighborhoods. So you couldn't travel overseas, but you might be looking to explore your own backyard. And lo and behold, it recovered quite quickly, really hooking into that experiential angle. Here's another example. It's a simple family snack bar in Victoria, Australia, called Theodore's during lockdown. And there's stories like this all over Ireland, all over the world. They pivoted to take-home meals and delivery. Yeah, so what, you might say, hasn't everybody? But one extra piece that they added, as well as the booze boxes and the cocktail kits and all that, they gave access to the bar's playlists, which I thought was interesting, because as much as selling the food to you to take home, it was almost like the experience and the atmosphere were being provided too, speaking very much to where we're at psychologically at the moment. And I could go on and on with examples on this. I think subscriptions are an interesting area. Before we came into the pandemic, we were paying for Spotify, Netflix. The Irish Independent launched its subscriptions, as you know, this year. We're used to it. So forward-thinking travel businesses and hospitality businesses got onto this experiential model too. That's a couple of examples for you there. That's Katz's Deli in New York City doing a subscription package where you get the actual pastrami right an interactive experience, putting it all together for a taste in New York in your home. And on the other slide is from the 12 Hotel, which is launched, that's in Galway, as you know, launched a lovely idea, a monthly cocktail subscription box kit. So it's that sense of bringing not just the product, but the experience, the vibe into your home, creating that rich connection with people while they're in lockdown that will hopefully bring them back to you in the future. And I'm seeing readers share that with us a lot. And once again, following the trend lines, where is better in the world for experiences like this, for food, for walking, for face-to-face interaction than Ireland? We get this right, we realize how people are traveling, we can lead. We're in a great position to come back on this if we start at it now. Sustainability, that's the next word I want to talk to you about. It's more than just a keep cup. It's more than just that chili bottle that you bring with you and refill. This is a slide I used to share regularly before the pandemic, but I thought I'd resurface it today because it shows just how far our thinking on sustainability has come. This is from One Hotel Brooklyn Bridge, dubbed a hydration station in its corridor. So you can come out and refill with water rather than using plastic bottles in the room, or as we might have called it a few years ago, a tap. And I thought that was interesting that we had gotten that into the language of travel, but had sometimes lost the bigger picture. What has this year given us? Only the bigger picture. Climate change hasn't gone away. We've all reconnected with nature. I dare say we may even be sick of reconnecting with nature at this time. My own son and I had taken up bird watching as a hobby this year, for example. I think having looked at those pictures of clear skies, having heard the quietness of the world without traffic, having been confined to our localities and explored them anew all over again, I think we're uniquely receptive to a broad sustainability message at the moment. And research shows us again and again, particularly millennials, Gen Z customers are prepared to pay more for products that are sustainable if they're sustainable right way, if it's not just notional and it's not just box ticking. Let me give you one or two quick examples. This couple of weeks ago, the Preferred Hotel Group, you may know them, their hotels in Ireland include the Dillon in Dublin and Hayfield Manor in Cork, for example. They released a Beyond Green initiative. And I thought when I saw the release come in, yeah, you know, here's another corporate press release. But then I started to read through it, not just about environmentally friendly, but there was language like natural and cultural heritage, social and economic well-being of communities, about travel with purpose. And I really was encouraged to see that this wasn't just important and all as waste and energy are. They sometimes dominate the discussions of sustainability, and they can, because they're kind of back of house issues, they can turn readers and consumers off a little bit. But I just loved seeing that kind of language. And they're not alone. Diageo released a Society 2030 plan just a week ago. And this is the first time I've heard, you know, sea to plate and farm to fork. This is the first time I'd heard grain to glass. They want to make carbon neutral pints. Okay, that you might expect, but digging down into the document, they said, we want to commit to working with 150,000 smallholder farms. We want 50% of our leaders in future to be women. We want 45% of our leaders to be from ethnically diverse backgrounds. And again, big company, really tying together all of those broad issues. Is this travel's fast fashion moment? Is all of this going to come together? Is this the time when we decide as we travel back that we're going to travel back more sustainably? At first I thought it was wishful thinking, but now I think it well may be. And I think there's a leadership role for tourism to play in this. If we all buy into this message, if we tie into how consumers are looking at it at the moment, I think we can travel back better. And I know that sounds cheesy, and I know it's borrowed from, but I do think taking the optimistic tone that we can do that. Okay, finally, community, return of the local is the last concept I want to bring with you as a topic for discussion. I want to zoom out for a second, go to Bangkok in Thailand. This is Garima Arora. She's the head chef in one of the world's 50 best restaurants. That's GA in Bangkok, not GAA. I'm a champion of Thai local ingredients, she said in a recent interview. Local techniques, local this and that. But I think we forgot about our local client base. Restrictions on travel made us realize that we weren't paying attention to our biggest local asset. And I think a lot of city hotels, particularly city restaurants, other businesses around the world are thinking something similar at the moment. So one of their response was to build a new casual canteen and wine bar that opened all day, not just at night for fine dining, to create, and I quote, an accessible experience for Bangkok natives. Interesting take. Zoom back into Ireland. Haven't you just been bowled over by how the community has rallied together, how our tour, and it's made me so proud that our tourism and hospitality businesses were at the center of the drive to feed our healthcare heroes and feed local members of the community. They didn't, when the first lockdown happened, the creativity and the drive to help and the energy just amazed me and really helped kind of give me energy too. And I think our communities have really remembered that. I think they will as it go forward. This sense of our communities was absolutely bedded in when we went on those staycations during the summer. We really saw how our spend made a difference to local businesses, local people who could come off the furlough and get back to work just because we were going on holidays. We've seen all the shop local guides. Tomorrow is being cast as Green Friday as well as Black Friday. I think that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity from the domestic market front to galvanize that. Fáilte Ireland's research said that, you know, people got out to travel in Ireland more than they ever had before, and they experienced a beautiful thing. Delight, surprise, relatively little griping about weather and picnics in the pouring rain and all the rest of it. But they think, and again, we'll have to work hard to bed this in. They think that as people travel in the future, they're likely to take more home holidays together with those overseas trips. Of course, we want to get the sun on our backs again. We always will. But this is a re-engagement, a new relationship, a new bond that has been struck between the traveling public and tourism and hospitality in this most difficult year. And we really need to remember that and cultivate it as we go forward. Community was a trend in hospitality as we go forward. This is the Hoxton in London. It sells local t-shirts, local jams, local teas in its retail spaces. It has local food on its menu, local drinks in its cocktails, local artwork on its walls, and more Irish hotels following that lead, becoming neighborhood businesses. And what I think that says to me as a traveler, to my family, to our readers, to consumers, is that after this pandemic, you are a local employer. You're helping hold this country together and provide that employment. You're supporting Irish culture and food and art. You're offering an immersive stay for us that we couldn't have anywhere else in the world. You care about sustainable tourism and you understand where we're at as we emerge from lockdown and we start on those trips of the future. And again, finally, Ireland can lead. Ireland can be the best little destination in the world on this front. We get our communities, we take this vibe forward, we do what we've done best and bring it to the next level. This is Lonely Planet. It gave the Burren Ecotourism Network one of only 30 spots on its top 30 for 2021 this year, all because of its community and sustainability values. We can learn from them and the world can learn from us. Thank you so much. I hope that's some food for thought. And I will stop sharing if I can here and get back to you.
Okay. That was super, Pól. I'm just trying to get back in there on video, but I will in a moment. So if you give me just a minute, really feel it. That's such a positive and upbeat message. So thank you so much. And I mean, I feel my lexicon has totally expanded after that conversation. I'm loving the phrasing around wilderness is the new wellness and holidays without the hordes and the year of the bubbles. So lots of really good thought-provoking content there. And I will leave you draw breath for a moment while I introduce the other people, the leaders from our industry who are on the panel today and who we thank most sincerely for giving up their time for rehearsals and tech checks and of course the panel discussion this morning. So first up, let me introduce Ruth Andrews. Ruth has was elevated and took the role of Chair of Tourism Task Force this year, and has played a fantastic role for us as an industry. And we're looking forward to hearing her insights into the work of the task force and just where she sees the future of Irish industry, using the points that Pól has raised. Let me introduce Jenny DeSaules, who's Director of Sector Development for Fáilte Ireland and who is well known to many of you, and Brian Bowler, who's Deputy President of the IHI and is also General Manager of the Montenotte Hotel in Cork City. So I think we have, I think panel, you'll all agree with me that we have lots of food for content and discussion there from Pól's presentation, yeah?
Sure do.
Yeah, indeed. And so I might start actually just, you know, one of the things that struck me when he used New Zealand as an example, and I know that that could be quite testing to always bring New Zealand into the picture, but I think it's, you know, I suppose one of the questions that I wanted to ask Ruth, and maybe I'll address this one to you first, is do we need to think about our success in the tourist industry in Ireland in a different manner now? You know, for years we were very focused on metrics of numbers and visitors, and do you think that maybe our success should take a different shape as we come out of this crisis and we recover as an industry, and maybe that we should be more focused on sustainable and community metrics?
Thanks, Una, and good morning, everybody. Lovely to be a part of this terrific session. Yeah, absolutely, and that was a great presentation by Pól, and it certainly focuses the mind. But yeah, I really do believe that in every crisis, it brings opportunity. And while this one makes it harder to focus on that opportunity, given that survival remains such a key imperative right now, I believe that there is opportunity to rethink and reshape Irish tourism. The climate crisis hasn't gone away. Brexit hasn't gone away. So those challenges are going to remain with us as we map our way towards recovery. But we're an incredibly resilient bunch in tourism, and God knows we have pivoted and shown incredible agility as an industry over the last number of months. But tourism is a community in itself that fuels the sustainability of so many small communities, villages and towns where there are no other industries in their regions, perhaps other than agriculture. So the industry had already started the process, you know, across all sectors in building more sustainable practices, you know, in our businesses to benefit wider communities and the environment, and we must now take that opportunity in our rebuild to continue on that path and really to make a concerted effort to rethink how we rebuild in that regard. And I suppose we also have to remember that, you know, we had for the last decade started to focus, you know, the metric for success was about revenue. It wasn't necessarily about volume. And that's not to say that we don't want to have as many international visitors and to grow our domestic market as possible. And that's going to be important. But there are times of the year, again, we go back to the regionality and seasonality aspect, where we have the opportunity to do that. And I think as we move towards looking to the future, as we move towards recovery, I think sustainability at all of those levels is going to be hugely important. And I think the industry is absolutely up for it and really wanting to embrace it.
Thank you, Ruth. And Jenny, I'll invite you in on this because obviously as head of sector development, the shape that the industry will take in the years to come is a critical kind of item on your agenda, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it's like Ruth said, the you know, those trends in terms of environmental and sustainability haven't gone away. So I suppose when we think about tourism, you know, when we're looking at our development strategy within Fáilte Ireland, we have what we call the VICE model. So that's very much about ensuring that we're focusing on the visitor, the industry, the community, and the environment. So it is like Pól was saying earlier, it is really important that we kind of recognize, as Ruth was saying, that the tourism community, it's not just the businesses, but it is that wider community. You know, if you look at certain destinations like Kerry, where kind of 1 in 3 families actually have somebody who's working in the industry. The industry there is a bigger and wider community, and as Ruth said, tourism is sustaining communities right across the whole of Ireland. And we've really seen that during the COVID crisis, when we've had parts of tourism closed and communities have lost kind of key places to gather. So for example, the role that the hotel plays in some of those smaller communities is really central to actually supporting that community social engagement. So I think, you know, this piece about having that wider approach about tourism is really important. And like Ruth said, sustainability isn't going away. I mean, I know we might all think right now, because everybody's using PPE and plastic usage has gone through the roof, but hopefully once we come through COVID, we'll be back in, and we know that the consumer is going to be looking for those sustainable experiences. And I think the trends, you know, around outdoor, you know, are not going to go away. And I think COVID has actually shown us that in for Ireland. You know, sometimes we can say we're not an all year round destination, but if you look at other destinations like Prague, etc., they still do outdoor dining, etc., in winter, which are a lot more severe than ours. So I think, again, a big focus on looking at how we can bring the indoor experience outdoor and kind of meet those new changing demands of that visitor that Pól talked about, that desire for outdoor space, that desire for safety. And that desire for the wider community. And yeah, as Ruth said, you know, our strategy before this was very much about driving value rather than volume. But I think now it's about how we actually do that.
Okay, that's great. And you've hit on some points there. So I want to bring in Brian, who's the hotelier on the panel. And Brian, you've been at the coalface in terms of, you know, working the industry with obviously reduced teams, and the stop and start nature of the restrictions has been a huge challenge. But I know that you, when in discussing the topics for today, you wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability and maybe share the thoughts from a hotelier perspective.
Yeah, I suppose, look, sustainability was very much atop of the agenda, I suppose, pre-COVID, you know, and, you know, many kind of hotels had lots of plans and had been working on a lot of sustainability projects over the last few years and planning for the year ahead in terms of 2020. And it made up part of your business plan for the year. So all of a sudden, when I suppose we closed here on the 18th of March and, you know, your focus completely changed. And when we did reopen on the 29th of June, where we were focusing on reducing single-use plastics, all of a sudden we were surrounded by more single-use plastics than ever before in terms of, you know, gloves and people wanted kind of both products before to show that you're being sustainable and conscious of your environment. That all of a sudden the single-use plastic toiletries in your bathrooms and your bedrooms became what people were looking for, because they wanted to avoid high touch points, and so it very much changed. But I think the important thing for people to remember about hotels, like every hotel is different, and you've got newer buildings and older buildings. And I suppose a lot of what we talk about sustainability in terms of particularly single-use plastics, all the very visual stuff, and all that has to be managed, and there has to be a process developed about reducing those. But with hotels, particularly the older properties, like, you know, a lot of what you don't see is what hoteliers put in behind the scenes. You're talking huge financial you know, implications and huge financial input by hoteliers into their businesses in behind the scenes in terms of energy reduction. You look at things like, you know, boiler efficiency and stuff like that. It's huge, like, you know, and I think the really important thing is that everybody buys into it, and there's some great programs and great supports there. There are grants available for various things. I think a lot of hoteliers have availed of those by now, and I think even our own member in the Irish Hospitality Institute, Maurice Bergen, has a great program at the Green Hospitality Program, which is really superb in terms of giving pointers and that. So I think the more that hoteliers buy into that and sign up to these programs, because what we will see when the international corporate market returns, and particularly the conference market, it's high in their agenda. Like, you know, if you're filling out a proposal, or anybody is interested in using your venue as a conference venue, or putting their delegates up, and they want to know what your sustainability message is and how tuned in you are to it, and they may or may not consider you as a destination if you're not playing ball with them. And countries like New Zealand will leave us behind if they're that focused on it now, and if we're kind of putting it on the long finger, saying, oh well, let's get through today and the crisis we're going through at the moment and focus on it in a year's time, perhaps that'll be too late for us.
Okay, great, Brian, and so a great answer, and thanks for all of that. And I suppose it just shows the challenges that are in the industry, and I suppose how we will have to collectively all adapt and be agile to support things like the bigger projects that have to be undertaken in older and newer buildings. Ruth, if I can ask you, in terms of remaining competitive as a destination going forward, how vital is it that Irish industry, remains competitive on the international stage in terms of, we know that 75% of our tourist industry or numbers were made up of international visitors up until this year. So I suppose just how competitive do you think, what would be the influence of competitiveness on us as a destination choice?
Yes, indeed, it's going to be key to recovery, Una. And those of us who've been around for, I suppose, decades and gone through numerous crises in tourism, none, by the way, which compare to this. But this crisis is truly global. And when we get back to stabilization and recovery and getting to those international markets, which are absolutely integral to Irish tourism, there is going to be fierce competition in the global marketplace. So I don't think anybody is not aware of that. So we will have to be competitive, not just in price, but in building competitive advantage. And that's in a variety of ways. But remember, competitive advantage, while price-led initially, and we've seen that already, as I think Paul mentioned, in terms of the airline industry, who are offering incredible value now to secure funding and win and secure business for next year. We'll also need to be very flexible in terms of how we're doing our business. People committing to travel and putting down their deposits will need flexibility, and they'll need to have the comfort and assurance that that is going to be there, because people will and may have to change their travel arrangements at much shorter notice. So we have to be to the forefront of giving that level of assurance to our international customers and indeed our domestic customers, if we're going to motivate them to travel with us in the future. But I think also, we consider this hugely as part of the TRT report as well. And we're going to have to continue to demand government policy and measures to facilitate the industry's competitiveness, because we can't do this alone. And I think some of the things that we called out and some that we have been successful in the recent budget in achieving, such as the retention of our tourism VAT rate, that has to be the retention of that rate full stop, not until next December. So we have to see that sort of support being put in place. We have to see the government support insurance costs being made and brought into line. And again, that's going to be vital, because it's a significant challenge for the industry. And we also need to see support and investment in things like digitalization to help improve, I suppose, the industry's productivity, but also the industry's bookability. And that globally has been recognized as an opportunity now as we rebuild tourism industries. We've seen what digitalization has managed to do for us in these very dark times, and we need to really embrace what we've learned, continue to learn, and look at how we can invest in that as an industry and be supported to do so.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. And that I suppose brings us a little bit into, it's great to have broadened out the topic away just from just pricing maybe and how we see ourselves in terms of competing with other destinations. Pól, I'm going to go back to you first. I can't give you too much time off. And I just want to check in with you in terms of who would you see as our competitor destination, as we emerge? You very much, are encouraging us to say we can do it and we can lead and be a great destination. Who would you think we're competing with to be that destination of choice?
Yeah, well, I suppose you need to look at the markets. First of all, who's going to travel first? It's likely that there'll be, after domestic, you'll see a comeback from continental Europe if everybody gets their act together relatively similarly. So then you'll be talking about visitors from possibly Germany, from Spain, from France, from the UK. then your train of thought would go to, well, what would they, if they're sitting down making a holiday choice at home, what will they be thinking and where will they be looking at? So traditionally, we'll be fighting the competitors within Europe. And I think we're, you know, if you compare Ireland and Scotland, Ireland and the UK, I think we're holding up relatively well reputationally at the moment. But we really do need to have a compelling offering for people ready to go, and we need to have a message. The underlying message all the time should be that Ireland is safe, Ireland's handling this okay. It's not been immune to it. We've had a terrible time, but that when you come back, we're safe, we're ready. It's not a cheap country. We can't go and compete against Eastern European countries on price. What we have to get out there is that when you make a decision to come to Ireland, you get amazing value. Yes, it may be more expensive, but you get the fresh air, the amazing outdoor opportunities, the safety, the hospitality, the personality, the landscape. It's not quite a once in a lifetime proposition like Iceland would be, but it's sitting kind of in between those two places. So that's what we need to be. We need to say to people, value doesn't mean cheap. Value means a holiday in Ireland that you remember for the rest of your life.
Yeah, so it's creating that real kind of memorable destination piece, and that people will pay for a premium experience as such, because we're not ever, as you say, going to be a cheap destination. And I suppose, Jenny, as we talk about this, then the shape of the industry, and you know, we've some questions in from our panel, but not from our panel, from our audience, I should say, is that, you know, how are we going to retain staff and retain that skill set that's so critical to, you know, powering the industry, as Ruth says, in the first instance, for survival, continued survival, and then obviously emerging into recovery as we go forward.
Yeah, and look, that is going to be a challenge, and you know, we had that challenge pre-COVID, so you know, we had done quite a bit of research pre-COVID when we were seeing that actually there was a shortage of supply into the tourism industry. And I think it is really interesting to understand how people perceive tourism. And, you know, what we really saw that was tourism wasn't really seen as a tourism career. And I think it's interesting, there's almost two views of tourism. If you're in tourism, you love it and you're passionate about it and you see it as this career. But if you're outside of tourism and you're not, you don't have anybody who's in tourism and you're looking in, actually your perception of it is very often the holiday jobs that you had. So you're either a waiter or a barman, and that's kind of what you think about tourism. So there's quite a bit of work for us to do in terms of shifting the perception. And I think what was interesting when we did that research, there was real challenges with mum, who actually tends to be very influential when you know, their daughters or son are filling out the CAO form. And when they were inclined to put tourism down, mum was saying, oh no, don't do that. That's not a great place to work, because their perception was long hours and not great pay. And the other area that was actually really challenging, and it was interesting for us to find, was that career guidance officers in schools did not understand tourism at all, and in fact had very little information about it. And actually we've done significant work with them in the last 12 months, and we've created a toolkit. And it's amazing, you know, there's a national association of career guidance, and we've presented to them, and their feedback is, we never knew this. We just did not know these jobs. So again, their perception was very much the hospitality. They didn't understand the higher paying jobs, like, you know, general managers, or, you know, that you could, you know, sales and marketing. They just didn't really associate that within there. So I think in terms of, we've got to continue to message that tourism is a good career choice, and we're continuing to target students coming in. I think in a wider sense, it's a little bit difficult right now, because obviously there's a lot of press really about the loss of jobs in the tourism industry. So again, this is going to make it more difficult, because, you know, those who are not in the tourism industry looking in right now would feel like it's an area where there's a lot of job losses, and there has been. I think in terms of us retaining staff, like we're working with a lot of industry at the moment, and unfortunately they are reducing team sizes because they have to, because of what's happening. And I think what's happening is a lot of the teams are having to double job and take on other responsibilities. I think there is a real opportunity right now to upskill those that are actually working within the industry. And I think, you know, from that point of view, there has been a lot of supports given. So, you know, in terms of the July stimulus package, there was additional funding of 47 million to higher education skills related to programs, and they will be delivered through partners with employees, and we're pushing to make sure that some of that money does go into tourism. I know Ruth actually talked about digitization, and it is interesting if you look at a recent report by Google. They talk about the level of change in the digital world in the last 8 months equates to the level of change for the last 8 years. So the level of change is phenomenal. And we have done quite a bit of work before this. And actually, a lot of our smaller SME businesses, generally the accommodation sector, particularly the hotels, are not bad at digitization, but actually, our attractions and activities, when we had a look at it, they're not actually as developed as they should be. And a lot of them don't have that ability to book online. If we've seen anything during this pandemic, is that's what people need. They want the assurance, they want to be able to plan. And the good news is we've been given supports in the budget for 2021, where we've been given 5 million, and part of that is going to be about upskilling the industry in terms of digitization, but also financially supporting them to be able to kind of make that change. And we have also given some additional budget for 2021 around training and development. So we are meeting with all of the sectors to talk about, well, what are the gaps? And we're certainly hearing that there's a lot needs to be done at an operational level. So we have developed a framework of operational upskilling that we'll be able to deliver either in-house or in destination for businesses. But one of the other pieces I think that's really come across with this, and leaders are saying this to us, it's really about how do we step change leadership in tourism, because I think, like Pól said, there is a real opportunity for us to step change Irish tourism. And so one of the other things we'll be looking at doing is a framework of development of leadership skills within those leaders and owners in tourism, so that we can take this opportunity that's coming out of this to shape and position Ireland for the future and be a leader in tourism.
Okay, great. And that's a really comprehensive, I suppose, overview of the supports that have arrived, to hospitality already and just coming down the road. And I suppose, look, I'm as everybody knows, that knows me, knows I'm a big fan of digitalization. And I think it's terrific the more that we can actually implement technology to allow us to focus more on the service element of our business and right across the sector. I think that will just lead to more premium experiences, which tie into what the consumer wants, that Pól has identified. And that answers some of the questions, actually, Jenny, thank you, that have come in on the questions and answers. We have a good question in from Tino Dwyer, back to the sustainability item. How important does the panel think that certifications like Green Hospitality of Sustainable Travel Ireland will be for the consumer? So I don't know, anybody who wants to take that. Jenny, do you want to start off, and then maybe?
Yeah, I might take that, because we're certainly looking at a program of sustainability, and we had a big program we were due to roll out, but then COVID came, so we'll be looking at it in 2021. I think it has a role, but I think, if we look back at the past, actually, I think we focused too much on green accreditation. We did a lot of work maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and we got a lot of businesses that were green accredited. If you look back, most of those have gone away from that. And actually that was because there was a bit of a benefit in the beginning. I think ultimately from a consumer perspective, it is something that they will look at. But if you look at destinations, particularly Scotland, who are doing this really, really well, they would say key to success is actually the cultural change within the industry first. So really to get the industry to buy into this, not to be so obsessed with getting the green certificate, but generally building the culture of sustainability within there, and then evolving towards the certification. I do think it plays a role in consumer choice, but I think it's important that we don't only do that. I think key to really step changing, I suppose, Ireland's performance within sustainability and its reputation is generating that culture right across the tourism sector. And I do think then maybe in 2 to 3 years, it is about getting that accreditation.
Great, thank you. Pól, would you like to jump in there?
Sure, yeah. I can't speak so much to the business side of it, other than to say I feel the businesses that have had most success on this are those that have engaged their staff. It ties back a little bit to staff retention. I think the more you feel as a consumer that a person who works in a hotel or restaurant is really invested in that place, their love comes across to you as they serve their food, as they check you in. They make recommendations, they tell you what the hotel is doing. That kind of that has to be cultivated. Those people have to be invested in, and I think helping them to engage in any kind of in-house sustainability project is one great opportunity for that. The other thing I'd say to Tina's point about the certification, I think generally speaking, it's a good idea, but the last thing a consumer wants is 15 different types of certification that they don't know what the difference between them are. This green, that green, one symbol, another symbol. So if it's clear, if it's like, you know, the example people always give is guaranteed Irish, if it's a clear, easily understood symbol backed up with messages about what it means and what the business has done, and then it's universally adopted, then that's useful for a consumer. But having a confusing array of them simply isn't, particularly now when our lives are so full of distraction.
Absolutely. And when a business is easy to do business with, we're more inclined to do business with them rather than having kind of confused messages out there on so many different channels. So it's about consistency, isn't it, of messaging, I think, as well. Brian, how well do you think, I suppose just from the hotelier point of view, just in terms of the training supports that Jenny has talked about, how accessible do you feel they are for a hotelier currently in Ireland?
Yeah, well, I have to say first of all that Fáilte Ireland during this pandemic, and particularly during the lockdown period, had some fantastic supports and still do on their hub and the Fáilte Ireland website, and they've been very beneficial to all of us in the industry, I think. So, you know, that's been really good. I suppose recently there's been a lot of, I suppose, different type of college courses that have come out that people can avail of, with 90% to 100% funding as well, which is really good. So during a period of kind of, I suppose, lockdown and relative inactivity in the industry, there's opportunities there for people to upskill. But I suppose the greatest challenge we have at the moment around our people and our staffing, and I suppose Pól mentioned about, you know, investing and you know, cultivating these professionals, and today's our Irish Hospitality Professionals Day. But unfortunately, we're in a situation right now as a hotelier where we're losing these professionals, and it's not the people who've just come into the industry over the last 6 or 12 months. We're actually losing people. I'm losing people here who've been in the industry, who are career professionals, who've studied hospitality, who've worked in the industry between 5, 10, 15 and 20 years, and just both mentally and financially at this point are making a decision to exit the industry because they're in fear of lockdown Mark 3, or even in some counties it'll be lockdown Mark 4 potentially after Christmas. So this is a huge challenge for us right now. Like, so, you know, the question is, what can we do now to retain them? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you, like right now, because I've lost 2 really good experienced managers very recently, to both of them gone to Amazon at different times, you know. But, you know, they're the types of industries that they're getting into, and they're good people, well trained, and they're people, you know what I mean? So they're actually going into leadership roles in those organizations, actually, because they've got really good people skills. And we're losing that to our industry, and that's going to be really difficult to recover from, because the recovery is going to come, and when the recovery comes at us, we need our people around us, and we need the best people we can get, because we want to provide the best service possible to our customers. And like Pól nailed it with his big 5 in terms of the experience, the safety, the sustainability, the community, but like the people, the local people who've grown up in the industry, who've trained in it, who are passionate about it. It's unfortunate like that we're actually losing those right now. And I think hoteliers are kind of going, but what can I do to keep them? Like, I can't give any certainty right now at this moment today. I can't even tell you what we're doing next week, to be honest with you, which is really difficult, like, you know. So I actually I read, I can't remember, was it a tweet or an article from Paul Gallagher last week, and it was actually exactly what I was thinking at the time. So that I must get a notification or some communication out to my team of staff. We're 150 employees in the hotel, and Paul mentioned that he was in the same boat, but actually he didn't know what to say to them. And I was kind of saying, well, what do I say to my 150 employees? Because I actually don't know what to tell them right now, because I don't know what next week looks like. So we've got a real challenge there, and just to kind of to go to the other side.
And I think that's a really shared challenge. I'm just a little conscious of time, Brad, but I think that's a great point to bring up, because that's what today is all about. It's about the people in our industry. It's about what I said earlier on. It's about how do we maintain the skill set to actually survive? Are we equipped enough now to survive? And I think we've shown great agility, but how, you know, what do we need for the future. And I know Ruth is anxious to come in maybe on this point, because obviously Ruth, as chair of the task force, this has been a key topic at task force level.
Absolutely, it's been a key topic, and what everybody has said is absolutely just so right. Our people are our core value, along with our place. And you know, I think within Irish tourism, we're very lucky in that, because we're in the hospitality industry, we're very good at sharing, and I think there's a huge onus on us now to focus on retaining those skills, because the pace of recovery when it comes will depend upon us having those professionals ready to go, ready to get on with doing the business. Having time to retrain people is just a space that is going to delay that recovery. So we devoted a huge amount of time in terms of how we're going to be able to retain those people. And I think within the industry itself, Una, peer-to-peer learning, you know, we can do formal approaches in terms of education and upskilling people, and that's important. But I think even within businesses, we have an opportunity now to kind of educate people across the business and actually help them to understand, you know, different areas that they won't have been engaged in.
Yeah.
And I say the whole peer-to-peer aspect of that, and how can we work across sectors to try and keep those people engaged in our industry. And it is difficult, and I hear in Brian's you know, commentary there, like the frustrations you know, are felt across all of the businesses and all of the business leaders. But I think really what this crisis has shown us is that, no, from the grassroots up, from the manager down to the guy in the pot wash or whatever else, people have come together in such an incredible way, and they're just up for doing what they can. Business survival is going to be where we're at, and ultimately sustainability right now starts with sustaining the tourism businesses and those vital components that we actually need to sustain and to make sure that they get past survival, so that we have an industry ready to rock when recovery happens.
And I suppose that's the biggest challenge facing us all. And I know we've over 400 people on the call, and somewhere within all of our abilities and agilities, we need to kind of think, how can we create that environment? And I know in the Institute, there's a huge amount of peer-to-peer happening at an institute level, but it needs to be broader than that. And we recognize that, and we have lots of different sectors on organization members on the call today. We've representatives from LVA, ATGI, you know, Avia, and I'm sure they're seeing the same in their industry. So I think that's a kernel and a takeaway from today, is that the current supports in place are not enough to retain people in the industry. And so therefore we could actually have a deficit when we come back to recovery. So I think I'd like to finish on perhaps maybe a more positive note, and say to you, Ruth, you really have emerged as a key leader in tourism this year. And I'd like you to just maybe talk us through how that has happened for you, and just to highlight the career path that you've had within tourism.
Thanks, Una. Yeah, well, I guess, you know, being a leader in tourism right now, and I took on the role as chair of ITIC over a year ago. Who could ever have imagined it would be in such turbulent times? And I suppose, like everybody, it's been demanding, it's been extremely challenging, but I guess most of all, to me, it's been a real privilege, because this is an industry in which I've grown up in. You know, I started in the hotel sector in the sales office in Doyle Hotels many moons ago, and this industry has given me, you know, terrific opportunity, not least because of the people and the colleagues that I've been so lucky to work with and to call my friends, but also, you know, to represent. So this industry is full of passionate, hardworking, immensely talented and committed people who are so generous with their time and sharing their knowledge. And that's how I learned my way up through this industry. And you know, I've never had a day where I haven't learned something new or met somebody with a different perspective. And that's really what this industry is all about. So we do need to find a way to harness that. We need to do that because we need to retain those fantastic professionals that we have across such a wide variety of businesses within the tourism sector. And we also need to find a way of retaining that so as we can encourage, as Jenny spoke about, you know, we're going to constantly need to look to bring new people into our business and to make them understand what a terrific career opportunity it is. So that, you know, when all of that comes together and when we get back to being the successful industry and let's, you know, talk about how successful we really can be when we are given the opportunities and when we're supported to do so. Look at how we performed after the last crisis. We can absolutely do that again. It's going to take time. We have to put our energy behind that, and I know we'll get there again. And as I say, it's just, for me, it's just been a terrific privilege to be a part of this industry.
Thank you, Ruth. And Jenny, I'm going to ask you maybe in closing comments, and I'll take closing comments from everyone. And obviously you've scaled to the heights as Director of Fáilte Ireland as well, which is a terrific career path. Is it a case that we're great at selling to our visitors, but we're not great at selling the industry ourselves as people, as professionals within the industry? That there's a touch of, we're great at attracting the visitor and servicing the visitor, but actually attracting employees and retaining them is not a key skill set that we have.
No, absolutely. And I think it's just not an area that we focused on, because those of us who are in the industry like get it and are passionate about it and feel like everybody feels the same about us and know it. Like, it's interesting, I came from outside of the industry. I came from FMCG, and it is interesting, for the first number of years when I worked in Fáilte, my peers from my other life just couldn't understand why I would go into tourism and what was that about. It seemed to be kind of this crazy world. And yet, you know, they look at me and say, but you love it, you're passionate about it. And I think it's just about sharing that passion. And I think, you know, tourism is in one sense one of those best kept secrets. And it is important that we actually make sure that we talk about tourism in a different way. And like, all of us have peers across the professional world. And I think it is a little bit like you talked about these networks. It's really about ensuring that those peers across the world, our network that are outside of tourism, that we're also kind of promoting that. And it's one of the things that we're looking in as well in terms of tourism careers. It's spotlighting tourism as a career in areas that are maybe not so associated, that don't necessarily associate tourism, like maybe in some of those areas like marketing or sales or different things, because they're not used to thinking about tourism as a career. So like, we have targeted, you know, final year students in sales and marketing to say, have you thought about tourism as a career? And what's really interesting, when you go in there, it's like, no, haven't, absolutely, not even on the radar. And yet then when you talk about the international brands, they get really excited, and you talk about the kinds of things that they would be doing in tourism. So I think you're right. You know, we're excellent at communicators. We do fantastic in terms of engaging our customers, but we do need to think about tourism, you know, as a career. And I think we need to think about how we can all work to actually raise that profile outside of tourism as this career choice, with loads of opportunity for progression and loads of opportunity for a wide range of diverse roles. Like, I can't think of a sector that has so many different exciting roles, you know. And if you think back to maybe STEM and science, where they started many years ago, but they have a very, you know, focused campaign about raising, you know, the profile of science and engineering. But, you know, tourism offers almost as much breadth and as much excitement, yet we don't talk about it. So it's definitely something.
Well, we're never short of excitement in tourism, let me tell you. But maybe we need to involve Pól and get Pól to write up great editorial about careers in tourism for us. Pól, would you like to give us a closing comment on today? I mean, thank you for the fantastic takeaways and the 5 key themes. I think I'm seeing loads of feedback on the chat and on the questions and answers. So really positive reaction to your presentation, but we'd love to hear from you on the final comment.
Thank you. I am reading the comments here with huge interest, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm seeing that there has indeed been a gap from the media point of view. It's fascinating to see it from the other side, and I do think that we have a piece of work to do there to highlight the kind of the diversity of careers that are available. When a lot of it is news driven, and we have a duty to report that, obviously, and that's been bad news this year too. But I will give you a commitment that I will take a look at this and try and figure out how to cover it, because this year I know that people in hospitality showed my 10-year-old how to operate a sea kayak. I learned about a person in hospitality who was responsible for the local art collection in their hotel. And I've met countless people who have revamped their menus this year to highlight local produce. It's not just about sitting behind a reception desk. There's so much more to it than that. And there's so much more creativity involved than we tend to show in the media. I guess just as a parting thought, I see a student has written in there to say he's worried about what the future would look like, or she is worried. I'd say, yes, it's not an easy industry. Yes, this is a terrible time, but let's just flip that on the head as a thought. Could this be the perfect time to get involved in tourism and hospitality? This is absolute disruption. This is the time for someone who has energy and drive and spirit and vision to get in there, to move rapidly through the ranks and to bring the next generation of hotels and holidays to us. There's never been a better time to do that than 2021. It won't be easy, but if that's you, go for it.
Great, super, Pól. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to ask Brian, as the hotelier on the panel. Brian, do you want to make a final comment? Just you sparked great conversation there, Brian, with your heartfelt comments earlier.
Well, I'm just really, really delighted at what Pól just said, and just to absolutely 100% agree with you, Pól, and what you just said there. And my message, like, because what I didn't get onto when I was talking there was really just about, I spoke about the people who've been maybe 10, 15 years in the industry, but the people who are just coming into the industry, the students who are still in college, who should be on placement but aren't right now. This is a really difficult time for them, but like, their time will come, and it's going to come pretty quickly. There will be a recovery, and we will be busy again next summer. I firmly believe it, and we'll need those people coming through. There's always training going on in the industry. Like, we will train people, and like, just get into it. Like, this is the industry. This will be the industry that will get our younger people back to work when the recovery comes. It was the last time during the last recession. It's a different scenario now because of it's a pandemic, and it's not just a financial recession. So we'll be a little bit behind other industries this time. But I think with the last recession, like, we should take some credit for the recovery that came in our industry. But this will be the industry. I firmly believe it, that when the recovery comes, we will be the industry that will get the younger people back to work and start giving people careers in this industry again. And it's just a reset. It's a difficult phase. We'll get through it, and we'll be better and bigger and stronger and internationally recognized once again for our tourism product.
Well, we couldn't end on a more positive note than that, Brian. So many, many thanks to all our panel today. You can see the comments in. There's huge gratitude for the openness and the engagement across the panel, and the honesty, I suppose, and the discussion that's been had today. So thank you to all of you, and sincere thanks, because I know Ruth and Pól are actually going on to another conference just shortly after, or a Zoom call. So we really appreciate your time. I suppose this now marks and concludes the end of session 1 today. Our second session this afternoon, commencing at 4:30, will be led by Valentina Durley, and our panel attendees on that session are Elena Kane Fitzgerald, President of the IHF, Adrian Cummins, Chief Executive of the Restaurant Association of Ireland, Paul Hayden, Head of Tourism Careers in Fáilte Ireland, and Deirdre Buckley, Director of HR at Ainua Hotel Group. We will kick off at 4:30 p.m. Just a few reminders, you will receive a survey post this webinar this morning. And if you could complete that for us, it would just give us great, I suppose it allows us to plan to be an institute that can actually meet the needs of the industry that we represent. To remind you as well, our President of Ireland, President Michael D. Higgins, will actually present to us at 17:40 this evening. So if you're registered for session 2, that will come at the end of that. And then we have a virtual network lounge after that. And now I think it's very apt that we finish this morning's session with a quick reminder from somebody we all know about the importance of staying local. Thank you all very much indeed.
Staying local has really opened my eyes as to what's all around us. From Louth, we have that wonderful coastline, Carlingford, the Cooley Peninsula, where indeed the great-great-grandfather of President-elect Joe Biden hails from. And then the village of Annagassan and O'Neill's pub, where you can enjoy wonderful food and great company. So for me, staying local has been an eye-opener.